Welcome back in. Today we're going to discuss some of our favorite late round quarterbacks you should be looking to take in your upcoming fantasy drafts. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, I think this season, I think there's two rules of thought. I think you either go elite quarterback, those early rounder quarterbacks, guys that go in the second, third, fourth rounds, such as Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts. I think those guys all deserve to be drafted in the early parts of your draft. I think after that, I think I'm just waiting until the double digit rounds. I think there's so many late round quarterbacks to draft this year, and typically we haven't really seen this as much in years past. And so I think this year really opens itself up for the late round quarterback approach to really hit this year. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to start with our first quarterback, and we're going to talk about Dak Prescott, QB 13, 110th overall. Now, Dak has put up 20 or more fantasy points in 4 of his last 6 seasons. Last season was notably a down year, though, for Dak Prescott. Only 1,900 passing yards, 11 touchdowns. He averaged 15.6 fantasy points per game. His 64.7% completion percentage at 6.9 yards per attempt were his worst marks since 2017. His QBR was also a career low. To make it worse, Prescott was also only on pace for just 27.6 carries and 114 rushing yards, which would also be career lows, aside from the 2020 season where he only played in 5 games. But under the hood, things weren't as terrible. I mean, he still was great at deep ball. He's always been a great deep ball passer. He was top 12 in deep ball completion percentage. He was 7th in pressure completion percentage, and he was still top 12 in completion percentage versus man and zone coverage. Now, Dallas last year ranked 6th in pass rate and 9th in neutral pass rate last year. Now, one of the biggest issues, though, for this offense was they just didn't really have any weapons. I mean, outside of CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson, a ton of injuries. You had Brandon Cooks, who was aging, who wasn't the same guy anymore. He missed a ton of time as well. You had Jalen Tolbert, and then Jake Ferguson himself missed time, which opened the door for Luke Schoonamaker to have some starts as well. So this offense just wasn't very good. Offensive line was not very good either. Their offensive line ranked 24th in pass block win rate and 23rd in PFS passing grades. Rookie left tackle Tyler Guyton struggled for most of the season, but did turn things around over the second half. Now, in 2025, this offense looks like it should be in much better shape. The addition of George Pickens cannot be undersold. I think this is a huge, huge addition for this offense. And I think this is really going to elevate things for this offense because like I've said, Dak Prescott's always been a great deep ball passer. He's pretty much been top 10 almost every single year of his career in deep ball completion percentage. They just really haven't had many great options along the way. And now you finally get George Pickens, who is a tremendous deep threat in this offense. They also went out and drafted Tyler Booker to replace Zach Martin. Now, Mike McCarthy is gone, but they did retain last year's offensive coordinator, Brian Schottenheimer. So I don't think this offense, in terms of how much they threw the ball last year, is going to change. This backfield's not very good. Javonte Williams is likely going to be the starter with Miles Sanders, who's never really been good in his career outside of 1 year. And then they also went out and drafted Jaden Blue in the 5th round. So I don't think this is going to be a team that's going to be running the ball a ton this year. I just don't think they have the personnel to do so unless they make a trade. There's been some murmurs about a Breece Hall, but we'll see if that comes to fruition. But if it doesn't, I just think this offense is going to throw the ball a ton. This defense isn't great. It's not the Bengals defense or anything like that, but I think this all sets up for a big bounce back spot. And just remember, just as early as 2023, Dak Prescott was the QB4, throwing for 4,500 yards, 36 touchdowns that year. So I really like Dak Prescott. I think he can bounce back in a big way this year. Let's go ahead and move on to the next guy. We're going to talk about Brock Purdy, QB 12, 111th overall. Since taking over the starter, though, Purdy has posted QB 6 and QB 10 in fantasy points per game over his first 2 seasons. He's never averaged over 20 fantasy points per game in a season, but he did score 20 or more fantasy points last year in 7 of 15 games. Last season, he ranked 10th in passing yards, but only 15th in touchdowns with 20. Well, I would never consider him a running quarterback. He did post 323 rushing yards and 5 rushing touchdowns last year, which was top 7 among quarterbacks. From an efficiency standpoint, also really good. He ranked 3rd in yards per attempt, 9th in air yards per attempt, and 8th in fantasy points per dropback. Now, 49ers dealt with a ton of injuries last year. You had CMC miss most of the season. Ayuk missed over half the year. Debo was fat, and then Ricky Pearsall was shot before the season started. So and then you had Trent Williams, who also missed time. This offense was kind of a mess last year with all the injuries they had, and Brock Purdy still produced on a week-to-week basis. So I think heading into 2025, the 49ers offense is one that I really want to bet on. Purdy has the 8th easiest schedule for quarterbacks as well. And as long as his weapons can stay healthy with George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk should be back around October. And then you have Ricky Pearsall, who's somebody that I am drafting everywhere I possibly can. And then Juwan Jennings is also another option within this offense. So, as well as not to mention CMC, who sounds like he's back and healthy. We've had no setbacks there. So this offense, I think, could be one that we really want to bet on this year. And Brock Purdy's another quarterback that you can bet on. Next up is going to be everybody's favorite late round quarterback this year. And I'm going to be no different than this. I have him as a top 12 quarterback already, and that's going to be Drake May. He's currently QB 16, 127th overall. He played in 13 games. However, he didn't take over as a starter until week 6. He finished with 2,200 passing yards, 15 passing touchdowns. He also chipped in 421 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. If you look at the games where he started and actually finished the game, he averaged over 18 fantasy points per game as a rookie. He did this while playing behind one of the worst offensive lines in the league and virtually no supporting cast last year. The 2025 looks a lot different. First, they went out and brought in Mike Vrabel to be the new head coach. And then you have Josh McDaniels returning to be the offensive coordinator here. After that, they addressed the team's offensive line problem. Last season, the Patriots' offensive line was terrible. They ranked 29th in protection rate, and PFF had them 31st overall in pass blocking. They also made plenty of changes by adding Morgan Moses and Garrett Bradbury on the offensive line, as well as drafting Will Campbell in the first round and center Jared Wilson in the third round. After that, they went out and made some upgrades by bringing in wide receiver Stephon Diggs and drafting Kyle Williams in the third round. Now, I didn't really know what to make of Stephon Diggs, especially at his age, but everything we've seen from Stephon Diggs in camp, he looks really good, and he looks like he's way ahead of whatever schedule that we would have thought he would have been, especially with that late season injury that he suffered. So I think that is a big time positive. Kyle Williams has been getting really positive reviews as well. So I do like this offense. They're also going to be having a slot wide receiver, Demario Douglas. We have to remember, I mean, we were talking about guys last year about like Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, who were absolute zeros last year as this team's offense. And now they also, not to mention Trevion Henderson, who has been probably one of the hottest names in terms of camp and preseason with how good he's looked. And so I do think this offense really sets up well. And not to mention, the Patriots have the fourth easiest schedule for quarterbacks this year. And so I definitely think at the very least, he's a high end QB2, but I think he has easy top 10 upside because of his rushing upside that he provides. And so I mean, he already had 400 rushing yards last year in just 12 games. I think he could easily surpass that this year. I think 700 rushing yards is in the range of outcomes for Drake May. So really the rushing upside is really what gets me the most excited because of all the quarterbacks we've talked about, he certainly has by far the highest ceiling in that department. So let's keep it moving. Let's move over to the next quarterback we're going to hit on. It's going to be Trevor Lawrence. I know we've talked about him so much, but QB 20 right now off the board. The Jaguars as a whole were a dumpster fire last year with Doug Peterson. Last season, Trevor Lawrence played in only 10 games. He ended up throwing just over 2,000 yards and 11 touchdowns. He averaged 15.2 fantasy points per game, which is the lowest since his rookie season. He finished 35th in true completion percentage and 26th in red zone completion percentage last year. Previously to 2024, Lawrence did post back-to-back seasons where he finished right around QB 12, averaging just under 18 fantasy points per game. Now, heading into 2025, things look much brighter with Liam Cohen taking over as the new head coach. We saw what he was able to do with Baker Mayfield. Remember, Baker Mayfield posted career highs last year in almost every single category, was a top 5 quarterback last year. Now Liam Cohen moves over to the Jaguars. They also went out and traded up to get Travis Hunter here. I mean, Brian Thomas was phenomenal. You have Britton Strange, who's taking over for Evan Ingram, who's now in Denver. But overall, I think there's a lot to like with this offense. I think it's one of the more undervalued offense outside of Brian Thomas. I think Liam Cohen can do wonders with this offense. And really, Trevor Lawrence has never really been put in a good situation. You know, we could say the same thing about someone like Baker Mayfield of all his time in Cleveland. Then he bounced went to Carolina, and he went to Carolina, and then went to the Rams for a game. And then he finally got a shot with the Bucks, and then he's kind of taken off from there. He was finally put in a good ecosystem, and then we saw Baker Mayfield take off. Am I saying Trevor Lawrence is all of a sudden going to put up a top 5 fantasy season this year? No, but I think he could easily outperform this ADP. And at the very least, I think you're talking about a player that at the very least that is a streaming option that could end up working his way into more than that. So, and Trevor Lawrence also does possess some rushing upside as well. He's had over 300 rushing yards in 2 of his last 4 seasons as well. So I think he can give you a little bit something. Lastly, the last guy I want to talk about is going to be JJ McCarthy, QB 19 off the board. Now, we have seen this Kevin O'Connell system really work or since he's been a head coach of the Vikings. I mean, Sam Darnold last year is a great example of this. QB 9, throwing 4,300 yards and 35 touchdowns. Darnold previously was never better than 15 fantasy points per game or QB 24. And it's not even him. I mean, Nick Mullins went on that run a couple of years ago. You know, Joshua Dobbs, who they brought in. Like, this team is just so well set up. The offensive philosophy that Kevin O'Connell has just produced fantasy production year over year. And it doesn't hurt with all of the weapons that they have on this team. And so, McCarthy obviously didn't play last year because of injury, but If you go back to his time in Michigan, he completed 72% of his passes. He was also fifth in catchable throw rate. McCarthy also has some potential to pick up some yards with his legs, although he never really did it at Michigan. He never topped 300 rushing yards. But last year at the combine, he ran a 4.5 and he boasted 90th percentile agility. Like that is certainly in the range of outcomes. I don't know how much he does it this year coming off the injury he has, but that is certainly something that he could possess as well. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to have 900 rushing yards, but I think someone that can give you, in that 3 to 500 range, I think is certainly in the range of outcomes as well. Lastly, I mean, just the weapons. Like I like Justin Jefferson, who should be ready to go for the start of this year. Yes, Jordan Addison is going to miss the first couple of weeks of the season because of the suspension. But you're going to have him back, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, and not to mention their offensive line is going to be phenomenal. They went out and made a ton of improvements along that offensive line. So everything really sets up well for JJ McCarthy to take advantage of this. I have him just outside of a top 12 quarterback, QB 14 for me, but I think he could easily outproduce this. And again, another option that we're probably going to be talking about really early on as a streaming option to add to your team. So like JJ McCarthy as well. So I think there's easily some other quarterbacks I could have hit on. Like I said, I was going back and forth. I think somebody like a Justin Herbert, though I have some concern with how much they throw the ball because of the offensive philosophy that Jim Harbaugh has, and Greg Roman. And then you also have guys like Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, I think are also players that we can talk about. Caleb Williams, I think easily could be a awesome late round quarterback, though he's had a lot of struggles in camp, but he did look really good in his last preseason game against the Bills. Now, we should mention that none of the starters were playing for the Bills defense, so he was going against all backups, but still, it was at least a positive improvement for Caleb Williams, new head coach there with Ben Johnson. So there's just a lot of options here, late round quarterback. Love this group, but those are the top 5 I have. Let me know if I missed anybody. If anybody's going after that you're excited about, something like a Bryce Young or Michael Penix or Cam Ward that we didn't even hit on. Let me know in the comments section below. We'll see you on the next one.